Welcome to this edition of The Soul of Warren County. I'm your host, Mickey Gwynn. Warren County is known primarily as an agricultural area with various farms, whether nurseries, crop farms, or livestock farms dotting the local area. But very few of those farms are owned by people of color. We're privileged today to have the patriarch of one of the few black-owned farms in Warren County, Marvin Lusk, known to a lot of us as MT, in the studio with us today. Marvin, welcome to the Soul of Warren County.
Thank you, Mickey. Thank you for having me. It's a privilege to be here. Maybe tell you a little bit about myself as well as things that's going on in the black community here in McMinnville.
Thank you, appreciate that. And that's where we're going to start off with, talking about Marvin Lusk, MT. I know you've had a very distinguished past and present. So tell us about Marvin Lusk, past and present.
Okay. I am 74 years old. I was born here in McMinnville on the east portion of Warren County, which is Highway 30, which is going towards Spencer, Tennessee. We lived on a farm, and we called it a Lusk farm, but it really was not a Lusk farm. This farm was bought by my mother's mother.
Oh, okay.
And paid, and it's in the deed as Page heirs. Now, what happened on that is when my father and my mother married, they gave my mother a fourth of the farm, which was 25 acres. Mm-hmm. At that particular time, my grandmother had bought the farm, had sold eggs and chickens and things of this nature to pay for the farm. And then in the 70s, 50s or so, she got sick, so she came to town and lived with my aunt, her daughter, Gladys Spencer. So anyway, when my mother and father married, they got the 25 acres, and my father was from here in Warren County, and he, of course, like most black people back then, they lived on a farm. Mm-hmm. And then service come in, World War II. He went to service and got out in 1945, I guess, just by the time the war was over. And then he decided to farm. Mm-hmm. Well, at that time, the farm was 108 acres in the farm. And so if he hadn't have taken over the farm, most likely it was probably going to be sold because all of my aunts, which was 4 of them, and everyone had moved. Had one uncle, he'd moved to Ohio, and so the farm was just there. Mm-hmm. I think it might have been a few people maybe renting a little land and things of this nature. So he ended up taking over the farm. He went on the GI Bill and had some few classes in farming, and from that point on, and I was born on the farm. Mm-hmm. Anyway, there's 4 of us, got 3 sisters, and of course, then as time went by, I graduated in 1965, and
graduated from
Central High.
From Central, still Central then.
And
okay.
I was one of 5 people that integrated Central High. I went to Central High my junior year. And anyway, that's another story that we might get into a little later, but it was all good. But anyway, my father farmed, and of course, back then there wasn't a lot of money in farming. So he drove the school bus. He had his own route. Back then you had to buy your own school bus, and he had his route from Pleasant Hill Junior School, Pleasant Hill Elementary School to Bernard. And that's primarily where us blacks went, from Pleasant Hill and this side of the county. Mm-hmm. And anyway, we done that on up until almost my junior year. Then at some point in time, he decided to go to Detroit and started working. He started working at Ford's for a period of time, and I guess he was there 2 or 3 years. And I guess the love of farming come back on him, and so he came back home. Anyway, he did farm, and we done a lot of custom work. And I'm saying custom work like chopping silage, baling hay, things of this nature. And primarily the people that we worked with were primarily white. Mm-hmm. So if you're looking in terms of integration and things of this nature, I did not go through the experience of having to go to the back of eating, anything like that. When it come to eating at that time, and we went all the way to Van Buren, which is Spencer. So when it come to eating, we all sat down and ate. So anyway, when I got to graduated from high school, my father, I think, really wanted me to stay with and farm, but he knew that there was not enough money for him and me both. And of course, my mother and then my aunts, and they were all teachers. And of course, that's where they wanted me to go on to college. So I ended up going to college, and when I went to college in 1965, I started my freshman year. That's when the Vietnam War was pretty rough and getting rougher. And everybody was trying to go to college to get out of being drafted.
Right.
So my freshman year, time spring break come along, it just seemed like there was a lot of pressure on me that I just wanted to throw up my hands and just go on into service. Well, spring break came through, and I just said I wasn't going back. Well, as it turned out, I didn't get any peace at home. Daddy might not have said anything, but my mother and aunts, well, you need to go back. You need to go back. Maybe by the time you graduate, it'll be over. And so I wasn't getting no peace at home, and I just decided I was going to go back. And I guess when I got back, everything just sort of went away. And then I graduated in 1969 and was drafted, because draft board here in Warren County is a small draft board. Right. They can keep up with you. So a few weeks after I graduated, I got my drafting papers, and I just volunteered for the Air Force. So I stayed in 16 months. Daddy took sick, and I got out on a hardship discharge.
Okay.
Came back, started helping him get things squared away, still trying to farm. And I started working at Carrier at nights. And then after a couple of years or so, I decided that I wanted to go back to college and get my master's degree. And through the GI Bill, I was able to go back and do that. And I ended up starting work here at the employment office in 1971. And I was still, only thing I was doing in college was just working on my thesis.
Right.
So I didn't have to be in class at that particular time. So started working in the employment office, still helping Daddy on the farm. And I found out that there was a position open up at the State Area Vocational Technical School, which is now Tennessee College of Applied Technology. And so I applied, started out as a counselor, and I was there 42 years. And the last 20 years ago, I guess I was probably the assistant director. So I retired in January of 2019, started farming, which is my passion. And that's another story. We might get into that a little later on. But anyway, I'm farming about 300 and something acres right now.
Wow.
Staying busy. Somebody asked me yesterday, well, when are you going to retire? I'm not sure I'm ever going to retire, because if I stop doing what I'm doing, I'm not sure what I could do with the rest of my life. So that's pretty well where I am right now. I'm farming, and I enjoy doing it. Not making a lot of money, but I'm spending a lot of money. But I've been blessed in so many different ways as far as the farm is concerned.
During this time, you mentioned going to college and going into the Air Force and the other jobs that you've had. You've always had that desire to farm? Or was there a point where you said, farming is in the family, I know.
Well, yeah, that is true. When I left going to college, I said I never would come back to Macmillan. I said I never would farm.
Right.
And I held on to that. And then I had met a young lady in my junior year of college, met a young lady in Detroit. And if Uncle Sam hadn't come in, I would have probably been up there, most likely probably married.
Right,
But
right.
when Uncle Sam come in, that just changed the perspective of everything. And then I got out on like I say, on a hardship discharge. And at that time, me and the young lady sort of just parted company. And I wasn't interested in going to Detroit anymore.
Right.
Maybe Nashville, someplace like that. And so I started putting in applications for teaching, and I got a couple of interviews, one in Chattanooga. Not even sure if I got one here in McMinnville or not, but Murfreesboro. And anyway, I found out about a part-time position at the employment office as an interviewer. And so I ended up taking it. And then one of the ladies that worked at the employment office, her husband worked at the technology center, which is State Air Vocational Technical School at that time.
Right.
And she was telling me, says, there's a position open up. And in fact, the counselor there was a Paul Matheny, which is the brother to the sheriff Matheny.
Jackie, yeah.
Jackie.
Yeah.
And anyway, he decided that he wanted to go into service. He'd never been in the service. And he went in the service just under the wire, just under the wire. I'm not sure what the cutoff was, 34, 35, just under the wire.
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up taking that position, and that was in 1977, January of 1977. In March of 82, my father passed away. And the type of farming that he was doing, somebody had to step in and start farming. Well, I started stepping in. And the next thing I know, I was buying this and I was buying that. I was buying tractors and all the equipment and everything. And so that's how getting back into the farm bids. I had no intention of farming. And one of my neighbors, who was the county extension agent at that time, Melvin Scott, he came over one day and he says, you surprised a lot of us around here. And I said, in what way? He says, well, taking hold of this farm like you did. And I just looked back to him just with a solemn face, and I said, man, I surprised myself. Really, I did. That was no lie. And he said, well, maybe it just took your father's death to bring that out in you.
Right.
So that's how I ended up farming.
You were working at the vocational technical school during that time, still working the farm. Those had to be long days.
They were long days,
Yeah.
but you're a lot younger, too.
Well, that's true. That's true,
And that
too.
made a big difference. And at that time, we were growing hogs. I mean, Daddy had some sows, about 10 sows, and we had a little farrowing barn from start to finish. And I would get up maybe 4 o'clock in the morning, go down and feed the hogs that was in the barn. And we topped them out. So therefore, once they got to 25 or 30 pounds, and then we weaned them, and then we started them on a ration for top hogs. So I stayed busy. And that's another thing. I have my own equipment. I've been blessed to have that. I said if I was going to farm, I wanted my own equipment. So I got everything it takes to farm, but there again, it's still just one of me.
I was going to ask you this. It's still just you?
Still just me. However, I have a good friend now, and that he's 68 years old, and he lives within 3 miles of me, and he helps me do my hay. He can cut, rake, and then I do the baling, whatever, and then I do the stacking, putting it in the barn. That's probably the biggest thing that I really need somebody is doing hay season. And the rest of it, I can pretty well do it by myself. It makes for a long day, and of course I've had a few health issues down the line, but right now, there's not a whole lot to do. I'm just waiting for the corn to get ready, the soybeans to get ready, and of course, in between all of this, you're baling hay, cutting hay, and things of this nature. So it's you got a little certain period of time that you can sort of enjoy things and do other things other than farming. But if I turn around and look right, I can find something to do every day, every time of the day.
Yeah, I'm sure. Now, you mentioned, I guess initially the farm started out about 100 acres. You said you got 300 now.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
There's 108 acres in the farm.
Right.
And then I'm renting the rest of it.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And just by coincidence, and if you don't mind me mentioning names, there's a Bill Lusk here. and Bill is white.
Right.
And then his brother was a D. Lusk, and we all in this area. So Bill took sick a few years ago, and his daughter had been doing the farming, Cheryl. And 3 years ago, they asked me if I was interested in taking over the farm. So I took that over, and there's about 70, well, 80 something acres there. And then the Scott farm, Melvin Scott, Nathan Scott, who owns it, I had been renting theirs for probably 7, 8 years. So it's roughly 150 acres that, and then I have about 18 acres that I grow soybeans and corn on my part. The rest of it's pasture.
Right. And I'm sure farming is one of those occupations that you have to have a desire to do that. Because I know over the years farms have gone away as urban blight has come on, and farms turn into apartments and housing areas and things of that nature. It seems like we're losing farms at a pretty rapid pace. So I would imagine you have to have a desire to do that.
Well, like I said earlier, Melvin Scott told me, said, Mel, it just, since you were brought up on the farm, it
Right.
just took your father's death to bring that out. It is extremely rough, expensive, and you got to have a desire because it's really a 24/7 job. As far as my kids is concerned, they'll never come back to the farm.
Mm-hmm.
My sisters, when they left, they didn't come back. And one of the funniest things was whenever I started college, my parents, especially my mother, she was crying to see me go. But then when I started coming in every weekend, she was crying to see me come in every week. And I would bring all my clothes.
Right.
All my clothes would please. But I wouldn't have, unless you're born with a spoon in your mouth, a silver spoon in your mouth, it's extremely hard trying to get into the farming business. Now, if you had some desire going into farming, if you're going to go further your education, get your skill, and there's a lot of occupations in farming other than just row cropping and
Right.
things I'm doing. And like I say, I wouldn't advocate. Go along with what my father never did really say. He wanted me there, but he knew that there wasn't enough money for me and him both. So I took the high road, but I was blessed to be able to now, and I hope he's seeing me, that he's smiling now to be able to see that I'm doing both. Mm-hmm. And like I say, I've just been blessed with everything. I've got my tractors. I've been blessed. I bought 4 brand new tractors, and in fact, I've just bought another one in March. I don't think I'll be buying no more tractors. And that's another big expense is your farm equipment and things of this nature that you have to. But I've been blessed in that aspect, and of course, biggest thing too is sort of helping with my other job is sort of helping me on my taxes
Sure.
with Uncle Sam.
Right,
So,
right.
Yeah.
So have you ever even broached the subject of the farm with your sons?
No.
Not even.
Well, they're twins.
Right.
They're adopted twins. We adopted one, my first wife, when I
Right.
was 5 weeks old.
Oh, okay.
And of course, they ended up living in Shelbyville, but they have no inkling whatsoever to come back to farm. They enjoyed it when they was every other weekend and the holidays coming up. They enjoy coming, and but to come back and say you're going to farm 24/7, I never see that happening. And my sisters, like I say, when they left and going to college with them, they'll never come back, and their kids have no inkling in farms. So, and that was another situation. I had an aunt, and there was this family farm, the Page heirs. My aunt bought everybody else out. Her sisters wanted their money because my mother already had hers because
Right.
of the 25 acres. The rest of them, she just bought out. And so now, as it turns out, it's still the Page heirs, but at the same time, it's still us 4. So we got 1/4 of it.
Okay.
And like I say, when I stop farming or something happens to me, it might not never be sold. It'd probably be rented out, but nobody will never come back to it. And, I guess I was just blessed to be able to get to equip. Everything is so expensive. Like right now, I was talking to one of the realtors here. Land prices now, the way things are, land prices right now has gone from somewhere in the neighborhood of $8,000 an acre, good prime land. Mm-hmm. And when I bought, me and my wife bought 20 acres just right across the road, so that's made us 129 acres in the farm. Mm-hmm. But to ask somebody to come in, unless you're born with a silver spoon in your mouth, I don't think you want to go out and start farming. Well, plus the fact I don't think you can find any financial backings with that kind of money. 'Cause nothing comes cheap.
Yeah,
nothing comes cheap.
I can imagine.
But I've been blessed. Like I say, at that time I wasn't married, and I was working at the technology center, and the money I was making, I turned around after I found myself wanting to farm, was turning around and buying this and buying that. But there was a few times I wondered what bill I needed to pay, Mm-hmm. But we made it through. The Lord made it through for me.
You were talking about getting finances to help in the farming occupation itself. There's been a long-standing federal lawsuit brought by black farmers. Mm-hmm. I think it was originally against the USDA, claiming discrimination in loans and things of that nature. Were you ever part of that? I know you're aware of it, but were you ever part of that litigation?
No, I never was part of it. I sympathize, and I know there was a lot of things that went on. But in my situation, I've never borrowed any money from USDA. The money that I have borrowed to come from maybe the banks, and then I finally got smart and felt like I could save a lot of interest going to farm credit.
Right.
But I've never really had any problems with it. Initially, I had to get a co-signer, which at that particular time was more so my aunt than anything. But never, and you hear on TV and this black lawsuit that's going on. I can't remember his name right offhand. The one that's really pushing it, I think he's in Alabama or Georgia someplace, and he's talking about how hard it is to go through getting credit.
Right.
I never did really experience that, but at the same time, I didn't, like I say, the only thing I really had to borrow. The first tractor I bought was $25,000. Mm-hmm. And my aunt worked that out. She gave it pretty well, helped me buy the tractor.
Right.
And but from that point on, the first tractor I bought was a 100-horse tractor cab, okay? And that was going back into 82. The next tractor I bought, well, I'm talking about two in between, but the next tractor I bought would be equal horsepower-wise was 7 years ago, and that tractor has jumped to $70,000.
Wow.
Plus the loader that I bought was another $15,000. And of course, I bought two tractors in between. Mm. This last tractor I just got in April, it's a 100-horse tractor, but it's open cab. And I got $55,000 for it. And my credit was good. In fact, I got the lowest credit possible. But like I say, I've never had the problems of borrowing money. And of course, I've always tried to strive that keep my credit up.
Right.
And my credit is fine. Sometimes that can be a disadvantage because you can always borrow money. Sometimes you don't need to borrow money. You don't need no more. I don't need no more money at 74 years old.
I always say I can always use more money. But anyway, you mentioned about your sons and the future of the farm. It looks like you pretty much know it's not going to be a legacy thing passed on down. But you mentioned you would rather them rent the farm out than sell it. You'd like to keep it in the family somehow.
I wish it was some way, because like I say, my aunt kept it from being sold by buying her sisters and brothers out, things of this nature. And I've been blessed down the line, because my sisters, it could easily say, well, I want my part of the farm. And like I say, I took that over in 82, and I've taken it really to another level and everything. And so I hope and it would bring good. I mean, the way it's laid and whatever, No problem selling it whatsoever. But I hope that my sisters can keep it in the farm in some way. And like I say, I've got a fourth of it plus my 20-something acres. But I don't anticipate that. I know they'll never come back.
Right.
Because my baby sister, she'll turn 65 August the 5th. And she'll never come back. She's a nurse. She'll never come back. My other sister, one's in Cincinnati, another one's in Nashville. They'll never come back to the farm. So I hope and pray, and I'm going to sit down and talk to them, that they'll find some way of keeping the farm in the family.
In the family.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Well, Marvin, thanks for coming in today. Very unique perspective, a very unique situation that you're in, being a black farmer. As I mentioned earlier, it seems like farms are starting to go away more and more, and black farms are such a small quantity within our whole nation. But appreciate the history lesson and your insight into black farming, and who knows, you never know what the future may bring, but I would like you see that farm stay in the family. I think that would be, we don't have a lot of black farms. No. We can keep it in the family, that's a good thing.
But like I say, if you have any initiative being in agriculture some way, there's so many different areas that you can get into that can relate to farming. My cousin, Steve Officer, he was in 4-H, and I think his major was in agriculture. But he didn't, and he still has a little farm. He loves his lambs and sheep and things of this nature. But he's not necessarily farming. He's not necessarily buying all of this equipment and whatever. And he's happy that way. So you can still keep your hands in the pot, but you don't necessarily have to do the rope.
Do the whole thing.
And I honestly think most of the people my age, if they had another opportunity to get out of farming with the prices, and you're gambling on the weather, you're gambling on the prices. If they had another opportunity to get out of it, they would, I think. And I know our dairy people, several years ago, we had 100 and something dairymen. Now it's down to about 2 or 3.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So things have changed.
So things are changing, but they're going to have to come up with some way, because farming is the basics of our livelihood.
Sure.
We don't realize that. I mean, we go to Kroger's and you think the milk comes from processing, and chocolate milk comes from somewhere, but it's coming off a farm somewhere.
Yeah.
So we need to take care of our farmers, and I'm glad to see the USDA, they have issued, I think, about $5 billion towards the black farmers. I think there's it's been halted by some lawsuits right now, but leastwise somebody is looking.
Yeah.
And like I say, maybe I didn't need anything or blessed, but the ones that's pushing for it, maybe they will.
Yeah.
And but let me say this too, I'm not saying I haven't gotten money through USDA Soil Conservation. There's some programs that I have applied for, and I've always been accepted and whatever. So it's been good.
Yeah. Good. Thanks again, Marvin.
Appreciate it. Really appreciate it.
And thank you for joining us today. I'm Mickey Gwynn, and please join us for the next edition of The Soul of Warren County. And in leaving, I always say, make it a great day. Thank you.